The sun was slipping low over the rooftops, spilling a warm, amber light down quiet suburban streets. It was the kind of evening where people watered their lawns, kids rode bicycles in lazy circles, and dogs barked half-heartedly at the sound of passing cars. On Maplewood Avenue, the air carried the faint smell of barbecue from someone's backyard. Marcus Bennett was driving his black sedan down the gentle curve of the street, one hand resting lightly on the steering wheel, the other draped over the armrest. He wasn't in a hurry. He almost never was. Years of his work had taught him the value of patience, of thinking 2 steps ahead, of moving with purpose but without haste. He glanced at the clock on the dashboard, 6:42 p.m. Just enough time to make it home before his wife finished setting the table for dinner. He imagined her in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, humming to herself as she stirred a pot of stew. That picture was enough to make his lips curl into the smallest of smiles. But the smile faded when a sharp, sudden flash of red and blue filled his mirrors. A police cruiser had appeared behind him, its lights pulsing against the dusky sky. The siren gave a brief wail, not the full, screaming blast, but just enough to cut through the quiet and demand attention. Marcus's brow furrowed. He checked his speedometer, 31 miles per hour in a 30 zone. Turn signals used. Seat belt on. There was no reason, none. Still, he guided the car toward the curb with the smooth, deliberate movement of someone who knew exactly how these encounters were supposed to go. He shifted into park, took a deep breath, and kept both hands visible on the wheel. The cruiser rolled up behind him, the crunch of its tires over the pavement louder than it should have been. The driver's side door opened, and out stepped Officer Daniels. Daniels was in his mid-40s, with the build of a man who had once been athletic but had let that muscle settle into a heavier frame. His uniform was neat, but his gait carried the casual arrogance of someone who'd worn the badge long enough to think it gave him the right to read people at a glance. And Daniels was reading Marcus now, slowly, deliberately, from the shine of his polished shoes to the clean line of his tailored suit. Something in that look wasn't just assessment. It was assumption. Daniels stopped at the driver's side window, leaning slightly so his shadow fell across Marcus's lap. "Evening," he said, his voice flat but with a faint upward lilt, as if the word itself carried a private joke. "You know why I pulled you over?" Marcus met his gaze without blinking. "I can't say that I do, officer." Daniels tilted his head, eyes narrowing just a little. "Suit like that. I'm guessing you were speeding to some big meeting. Or maybe," his lips curled faintly, "maybe you just think the rules don't apply to you." "I follow the law," Marcus replied evenly. The silence between them lasted half a second too long. Daniels's fingers tapped against the edge of the car door. "License. Registration. Step out of the car." Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he didn't argue. "May I ask why?" "You may ask," Daniels said, "but I don't have to answer until I'm good and ready." "Now step out." Marcus opened the door, the hinges giving a soft metallic groan. As he rose, the evening light caught the gold face of his wristwatch, making Daniels glance down briefly before returning to his steady, appraising stare. The street was quieter now. 2 houses away, a man in a baseball cap had paused in his lawn mowing to watch. Across the street, a woman carrying groceries slowed to a stop on her driveway. Marcus could feel the weight of their eyes. Daniels moved toward the rear of the car, running his hand along the trunk as if feeling for something invisible. "Mind if I take a look inside?" he asked, though his tone made it sound less like a request and more like a statement. "Yes, I do mind," Marcus said. "Unless you have probable cause or a warrant, I'd prefer you not search my vehicle." Daniels' smirk returned, though it was thinner now. "Got nothing to hide, right?" "That's not the point," Marcus replied. The officer let the silence hang for a beat before leaning down to peer into the backseat. "Something about you," he said slowly, "just doesn't sit right with me." Marcus knew that tone. He'd heard it before, not just directed at him, but at others. It was the voice of someone who believed their gut feeling was enough to justify their actions, no matter the absence of evidence. "You're shaking your head," Daniels noted. "I'm just wondering how often you've used that line," Marcus said. The officer straightened, his jaw tightening. "Turn around." Hands on the car. Marcus didn't move immediately. Daniels stepped closer, closing the space between them. The air smelled faintly of coffee and the lingering scent of leather from the patrol car. "You want to make this difficult?" Daniels asked. "No," Marcus said, "I want to make this fair." Daniels' expression hardened. He reached for his cuffs. "All right, we're going downtown." We'll sort it out there. Marcus took a slow breath and then, without sudden movement, reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. Daniels's right hand immediately dropped to his holster. Easy there, he warned, his voice sharper now. Marcus pulled out a worn leather badge holder. He flipped it open and held it at eye level, just inches from Daniels's face. The gold shield inside caught the light, and the engraved words seemed to burn themselves into Daniels's vision. Internal Affairs Division, Chief Investigator, Marcus Bennett. Daniels's jaw went slack. His pupils dilated just enough to give away the flood of adrenaline. He took half a step back without meaning to. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Now, shall we talk about why you stopped me? Daniels stared at the badge as though it were a snake coiled to strike. The gold emblem seemed almost too bright against the dimming light, its polished surface catching every glint of the setting sun. He read the words once, twice, his lips silently forming Chief Investigator. For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of cicadas in the trees and the far-off bark of a dog. Somewhere across the street, a neighbor's screen door creaked open. The whole neighborhood seemed to be holding its breath. Marcus didn't move. He stood there with the badge held steady, his posture a perfect balance of calm and command. There was no anger in his face, no smugness, just the quiet weight of authority. Daniels blinked hard, his brain scrambling to catch up. Your internal affairs. Marcus's voice was quiet, but it carried the kind of weight that made men sit straighter in their chairs. The head of it, which means I investigate offices like you. The words hit harder than a shouted insult. Daniels felt the flush creeping up his neck. His grip on the cuffs loosened until they hung limply from his fingers. Marcus let the silence linger before speaking again. Do you know what the most dangerous thing about prejudice is, Officer Daniels? Daniels swallowed. What? You don't see it in yourself. But everyone else does. The words sliced through the air, landing with the precision of a scalpel. Daniels shifted his stance, aware of the eyes on him. The man across the street still holding his grocery bag, the kid on the porch pretending not to watch, the woman with the lawnmower idling beside her. Marcus took a step forward, closing the space between them. Daniels could smell faint traces of cologne, clean, subtle, not the overpowering kind. You stopped me because you didn't like the way I looked, Marcus said. You didn't know my name. You didn't know my history. You just decided. Daniels opened his mouth to speak, but Marcus raised a hand. No excuses. Tonight, you'll go home and tell yourself you had a hunch. You'll call it instinct, but deep down, you'll know it was bias. And the difference between instinct and bias is the difference between protecting people and targeting them. Daniels's heart thudded in his ears. He wanted to say something, anything, to reclaim some control over the moment. But Marcus's calm, unwavering tone left no cracks to slip through. You're going to get a call from my office in the morning, Marcus continued. It will be formal. You will cooperate fully. This will be your chance to prove you're capable of doing your job without letting your prejudices lead the way. If you can't, then you won't be wearing that badge much longer. Daniels's throat felt dry. Look, Marcus stepped back, sliding the badge into his pocket. We're done here. He turned and walked to his car, the sound of his footsteps measured and deliberate. The slam of the driver's side door was soft but final. Daniels stood frozen, watching as the sedan pulled away. The flashing lights from his cruiser painted red and blue streaks over the asphalt, but they looked faint now, like a stage light after the actor had left. The neighbors began to drift back to their lives, but Daniels could still feel their silent judgment hanging in the air. The humiliation wasn't loud, but it was. That night, Daniels lay in bed staring at the ceiling. His wife's voice was a distant hum in another room, the TV murmured low, but all he could hear was Marcus's voice echoing in his mind. The most dangerous thing about prejudice is you don't see it in yourself. But everyone else does.